Wordy Talks. Learn English, change your life.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Emma, and I'm just going to say it. I am genuinely excited about today's topic, like more than usual, because it's something I think about a lot, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about honestly enough. Like people kind of dance around it, you know? They talk about productivity hacks and morning routines and all of that. But the deeper question, the actually uncomfortable question, is why do most people never really fundamentally change? And I think the answer is more interesting than most people expect.
And I'm Leo, and yeah, same. When Emma told me what we were doing today, I was like, yes, immediately, let's do this. Because honestly, it's one of those topics that kind of applies to everyone. Like every single person listening right now has probably had this experience. You set a goal, you really mean it, you feel it, and then a few weeks later, nothing has changed. And you're sitting there going, what happened? Why am I like this?
Why am I like this is honestly the energy of this whole episode, but in a good way, because I think by the end of this conversation, you'll actually have an answer to that question. And the answer is not because you're lazy or because you don't want it enough. The answer is a lot more interesting than that, and honestly, a lot more forgiving.
Right. And I want to be clear. This is not going to be one of those episodes where we just say, believe in yourself and send you off with a motivational quote. We're going to get into the actual psychology, the real reasons why this is hard, and then the real practical things that actually help.
Yeah, because I think most people don't have a knowledge problem. Like, if I asked any random person on the street, hey, should you exercise more, sleep more, eat better, spend less time on your phone? They would say yes to all of it. They know. We all know. The knowing is not the issue. The gap between knowing and actually doing, that's the whole thing we're talking about today.
Totally. And there's this thing that happens where people turn that gap into a story about who they are. Like, I'm just lazy, or I don't have discipline, or I always start things and never finish them. And they say it like it's just a fact about themselves, just part of their personality. And I really want to push back on that today, because I think that story, as understandable as it is, actually makes everything harder.
It does. It really does. Okay, let's actually start at the very beginning. Leo, why do people want to change in the first place? Like, what gets someone to that point where they go, okay, something has to be different?
Yeah, that's actually a really good place to start. So I think there are usually two kinds of moments. The first one is what I'd call the slow burn. This is where the discomfort has been building for a long time, maybe years, and you've kind of been ignoring it or just pushing through. Like you've been in the wrong job for 2 or 3 years, and every Sunday evening you feel this dread, and every Monday morning feels like this heavy weight. And it's not one dramatic thing, it's just that at some point the weight gets too heavy to keep pretending it isn't there.
Yeah.
And then there's the sudden moment. Something happens, maybe something difficult, maybe something painful, and it kind of shakes you out of autopilot. And you think, right, I can't keep going like this. Something has to change now.
And I think most people have experienced both of those, right? But the slow burn is actually more common because a lot of the time we're surprisingly good at not noticing how unhappy we are. We're just getting through it day by day. And we know something feels off, but we're busy and it's easier to just keep going than to stop and really look at it.
And then one day you look up, and I love this image, you look up and go, wait, this isn't the life I wanted. How did I get here? I've been so busy just surviving each day that I never stopped to ask whether I was actually going in the right direction at all.
That is such a real feeling. And I think that's where most people get stuck because the realization comes and then nothing happens after it. The realization comes, there's a burst of, okay, this is it. Things are going to be different. And then gradually, slowly, life goes back to exactly the way it was. And I think the reason for that is something really deep. Change is uncomfortable at a biological level, not just inconvenient, actually physically uncomfortable for your brain.
Right. And this is, I find this genuinely fascinating. So there's this concept called homeostasis, and I know that sounds like a complicated science word, but it's really a simple idea. It basically just means that your brain and body are always trying to return to a familiar, stable state, like a thermostat at home, you know? The room gets too hot, the thermostat kicks in and brings it back down. Too cold, it heats it back up. And your brain does the exact same thing, but instead of temperature, it does it with your habits, your routines, your sense of who you are.
Oh, I love that thermostat image. So even if the familiar state isn't actually good for you, even if your normal is stressful or quietly miserable, your brain still pulls you back toward it because at least it's known, predictable. And to your brain, predictable equals safe, even when what's predictable is actually hurting you.
Exactly. And that reframes the whole thing. Resisting change is not a personal failure. It's not laziness. It is literally your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Its job is to keep things stable, not to help you grow.
Yeah, the brain really did not get the memo about personal development.
It did not. So when you understand that, when you stop blaming yourself and start seeing it as a biological challenge rather than a character flaw, you can actually start working with your brain instead of against it.
Okay, so I want to talk about motivation now because I feel like motivation is one of the most misunderstood things in all of this. And I think the way most people think about it is actually completely backwards.
Oh, yes. Ha! I have strong feelings about this one.
Go on then.
Okay, so the standard belief is that motivation comes first and then action follows. You wait until you feel inspired. You wait until the time feels right. You wait until you wake up one morning feeling energized and in the mood, and then you do the thing. That's the model most people are operating on.
Right, yeah. And it sounds so logical. Like, of course you need to feel motivated before you do something. That seems obvious.
But here's the problem. Motivation is incredibly unreliable. It comes and goes on its own schedule with no regard for what you actually need. You can feel this incredible fire on Sunday evening. This week is going to be different. I have a plan. And then Monday morning arrives, you're tired, it's cold, work is already stressful, and all of that motivation has just dissolved, like it was never there.
And then the guilt kicks in because you had the motivation and didn't use it. Now it's gone and you feel bad. And feeling bad makes it even harder to start next time. And it's this whole self-reinforcing cycle that can go on for years. Ugh.
Exactly. It's a loop. And a lot of people live in that loop for a really long time, just waiting for the right conditions, waiting for things to calm down at work. And here's the brutal truth. Those conditions almost never arrive. There will always be a reason to wait if that's what you're looking for.
So what's the alternative? If you can't rely on motivation, what do you use instead?
Systems, routines, structures that work whether or not you feel like it. Like brushing your teeth. You don't stand there every morning asking, "Do I feel motivated to brush my teeth today?" You just do it. It's what happens. And the goal is to get your new behaviors to that same level, where they're just part of what you do regardless of how you feel.
And what I love about that is it completely takes the pressure off your emotional state. You're not asking, do I feel like doing this today? You're just asking, is this Tuesday? Is this what I do on Tuesdays? And then you do it. The feelings become almost irrelevant.
And here's the thing that genuinely blew my mind when I first understood it properly. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel motivated before you act and then the good feeling shows up after. Like most mornings, I honestly do not want to exercise. I'm warm, comfortable, there's coffee right there, but once I get up and start, even just the first 5 minutes, I feel better. The good feeling comes after the action, not before.
I have experienced this so many times and I still forget it every single time. Like I'll be sitting there dreading something, writing, editing, whatever, building it up in my head. And then I finally start. And the first 5 minutes are genuinely awful. And then something shifts. And suddenly an hour has passed and I'm actually enjoying myself. And I think, why did I put this off for 3 days?
3 days, but yes, exactly. And there's actually a name for this. Affective forecasting, which basically means we are really bad at predicting how we're going to feel in the future. We imagine doing the hard thing and picture feeling terrible the entire time, but the reality is almost always much better than we predicted. The doing is almost never as bad as the anticipating.
I do this with social events constantly. I'll agree to go somewhere, and then the day comes and I'm completely dreading it, looking for excuses to cancel. And then I go, and it's great. And on the way home, I'm thinking, why do I do this to myself every single time?
Every single time. Okay, so let's go even deeper, because I think there's something more fundamental underneath all of this, and that's identity, who you believe you are.
Oh, this is the one I really wanted to get to. So, most people, when they want to change, focus on outcomes. I want to lose 10 kilograms. I want to save more money. I want to speak better English. And goals are fine, but if that's all you're focused on, you're working on the surface level. You're missing the thing underneath.
Because the goal is just the destination, but your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, is what actually drives your behavior every single day. And if your identity doesn't match the goal, there's this constant internal friction, this exhausting internal war every time you try to take a step forward.
Right. So if you say, I want to run a marathon, but inside you think of yourself as someone who just doesn't do sports, every time you try to train, your brain is going, but this isn't really you, is it? And that resistance takes so much energy just to start.
Whereas if instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you start telling yourself, I am a runner, even before you've run a single race, suddenly every training session isn't a battle, it's just what runners do. You're just being who you are.
And the idea is that every small action you take is like casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you do the thing, even a tiny version of it, you're collecting evidence that you are that kind of person. I love that framing so much.
So even on a day when you only run for 5 minutes, those 5 minutes are a vote. You're not failing at being a marathon runner, you're being a runner. Full stop.
Yes, and over time, those votes accumulate, and your identity actually shifts, not just as a story you're telling yourself, but as something you genuinely feel. And that's when change becomes self-sustaining. It stops being a constant effort and starts being just who you are.
And here's the thing that genuinely blew my mind when I first understood it properly. The labels we put on ourselves are so quietly dangerous. I'm not a morning person. I've always been bad with money. I'm just naturally shy. We say these things like permanent facts, like our height or our birthday.
But they're not facts. They're stories. Stories we've repeated so long they feel like facts. And the brain just runs with the story. It looks for evidence that confirms it. So if you believe you're bad with money, your brain notices every time you overspend and basically ignores every time you make a good decision. That's confirmation bias. Your brain filters reality to match what it already believes. And it happens completely automatically, without you even noticing.
So the starting point is just catching yourself, noticing when you say, I'm just not that kind of person, and actually asking, is that true? Or is it just something I've been carrying around for so long it feels true?
Okay, can we talk about fear? Because I feel like fear is quietly sitting underneath so much of what we've been discussing.
Yes, and I want to make a distinction. There are actually two kinds of fear when it comes to change. The obvious one is fear of failure, not wanting to try because you might not succeed. That makes complete sense. If you never try, you can never fail. Your sense of yourself stays safe.
Right. And I think on some level, we all do this with something. We have that thing we've been meaning to do for years and never start. And as long as we haven't tried, we can still imagine we might be great at it. The moment we try and struggle, that fantasy disappears.
Exactly. There's this specific comfort in keeping something as a someday dream, because the dream can't fail. The dream is perfect. The reality will be messy and full of moments where you're not as good as you hoped.
And so many people live in that someday space for years. Someday I'll travel. Someday I'll change careers. Someday I'll really commit to this language. And the years go by, and someday never quite arrives.
And here's the second kind of fear, the one people don't talk about, fear of success. Like genuinely being afraid of what happens if things actually go well.
And that sounds so counterintuitive. Why would anyone be afraid of things going well? But it really clicked for me when I first heard it. Because if you change, your whole life changes. Relationships might shift. People expect more from you. You have to maintain this new version of yourself. All of that is genuinely scary.
And there's this specific thing where staying stuck is actually safe because you know exactly how it feels. You've adapted to this discomfort. But the discomfort of a new life? That's unknown. And unknown can feel more threatening than familiar pain.
Right, the devil you know. And that's not weakness, it's just human. That's the brain doing the homeostasis thing again.
So, what do you do with fear? Because you can't just think it out of existence.
No, and I don't think the goal is zero fear. I think it's about changing your relationship with failure. This is where growth mindset comes in. A fixed mindset says failure is information about who you are. I failed, therefore I am a failure. A growth mindset says failure is information about where you are right now. I failed, which means I have something to learn.
And children are naturally growth mindset. A toddler learning to walk falls down hundreds of times and doesn't once think, I guess I'm just not a walker. They just get up, because falling is just the process. It's what learning looks like.
And then somewhere along the way, usually when other people start watching, we lose that. Failing starts to feel like shame, and shame is such a powerful signal to just stop. Don't try again. Don't give anyone another chance to see you not succeed.
So, one really practical thing, give yourself a private failing phase. Start your new habit before you tell anyone. Don't post about it on day one. Because the moment there's an audience, there's pressure. And pressure in the very early stages can kill a new habit before it even gets started.
And there's actual research on this. When you announce a goal and people say, wow, good luck, your brain gets a little hit of satisfaction, a small reward, and that reward reduces your drive to follow through. Part of your brain already got the good feeling, so it takes some of the urgency out of doing the actual work.
Which is wild, right? Posting, I'm going to the gym every day this year and getting 50 likes might actually make you less likely to go. The celebration arrived too early and took some of the fuel with it. So protect your new habits. Be quiet about them. Let the identity build before you invite the world to watch.
Okay, environment, because I think this is one of the most underrated things in all of this. Most people think change is a mental challenge, mindset, willpower, discipline, but your physical environment shapes your behavior far more than most people realize.
So much more. If you want to eat better but your kitchen is full of biscuits and chocolate, you are going to eat them. Not because you're weak, because they're right there. The distance between you and the bad choice is basically zero.
And willpower is finite. It runs out. Every decision during the day costs a bit of mental energy, and by the evening, most people have almost nothing left, which is why the bad habits almost always happen at night.
I was so disciplined all day, and then at 10 p.m. I just ate everything in the fridge. That's not a moral failing. You just ran out of resources, and your environment was full of temptation.
So the answer isn't to try harder. The answer is to change the environment so you don't need willpower at all. Remove the temptation before the moment of weakness arrives.
There's a word for this: friction, the effort something takes. Reduce friction for good habits, add friction for bad ones. Put a book on your pillow, charge your phone in a different room. And these things sound almost too simple, but our behavior is so much more automatic than we like to believe. There's a study about a candy bowl. Just putting a lid on it so people couldn't see the candy made them eat significantly less. Not because they decided, just because that tiny bit of friction broke the automatic reach.
We are so predictable, and I find that genuinely comforting because it means you don't have to be superhuman. You just have to be smart about your environment. Design things so the good choice is the obvious, easy, automatic one.
And your people around you are part of your environment too. Maybe the biggest part. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and there's real psychology behind that. Our brains constantly pick up cues from the people around us, their habits, their energy, what they think is normal, and we absorb it without even noticing.
So, if everyone around you never exercises, eats badly, talks about changing but never does, it is genuinely harder to do differently. You're fighting the current every single day.
And the norms of the group become your norms. We are wired to conform, so finding even one person who shares your goals makes an enormous difference. And accountability. Just one person who checks in. Not pressuring you, just, hey, how's that thing going? That alone makes a real difference, because you're not just negotiating with yourself anymore.
And the harder thing, what happens when people in your life actually resist your change, when you grow and the people around you feel uncomfortable with it?
It's usually not malicious. That just means deliberately trying to hurt someone. It's usually just unconscious. Your change disrupts the dynamic. It holds up a mirror. And even people who love you can push back without realizing it.
So you start eating differently, and suddenly your mom is putting your favorite food in front of you every Sunday. She probably doesn't even realize she's doing it. So protect your change in the early stages. Be quiet about it. Just do the work. The results will speak eventually, and results are harder to argue with than intentions.
Okay, let's get practical. Because I want people to finish this episode with actual steps, real things they can use.
Yes. First, get specific. Really specific. I want to be healthier is not a plan. Whereas, I will walk for 20 minutes every morning before breakfast, starting tomorrow, that is a plan. A when, a what, a how long. The more specific, the less room there is for your brain to find an escape hatch.
And start smaller than you think you should. Embarrassingly small. Most people fail not because they didn't want it enough. They fail because they started too big, too fast, and burned out before the habit had any chance to stick. If you want to build a reading habit, don't start with an hour. Start with 2 pages. Literally 2 pages.
2 pages sounds almost absurd, but here's what it does. It means you show up. Every day you do 2 pages, you're casting a vote. You're becoming a reader. The amount almost doesn't matter in the beginning. What matters is the consistency, the identity that gets built through showing up, even in the smallest way.
There's the 2-minute rule. If a new habit feels too difficult, shrink it until it takes 2 minutes. Meditate for 2 minutes. Write 1 sentence. Do 2 minutes of stretching. The goal in the beginning isn't to do a lot. It's to become the kind of person who does this at all. Once the identity is there, scaling up is natural.
And habit stacking, attaching a new behavior to something you already do automatically. After I make my morning coffee, I will sit and read for 10 minutes. The coffee is already automatic. The reading gets pulled along by it. You're not creating a new slot in your day from scratch. You're just extending something that already exists.
And then track it. A simple calendar with a cross on every day you did the thing. After a few days, you have a chain, and there's something surprisingly powerful about not wanting to break it.
I've used this and it works shamelessly well. I can be completely exhausted, really not want to do the thing, and then I look at the chain and go, I can't break it now, not after 12 days in a row. That would be a tragedy.
The tragedy of the broken chain. And then reconnect with your why. Not just at the beginning, but regularly. Because on the hard days, surface-level reasons disappear. I want to look better. Some days that just isn't enough. But if the reason is deeper, I want to be healthy enough to be present for the people I love, or I want to prove to myself I can do hard things, those reasons survive the difficult moments.
And the hard days will come. There will be days you slip, days you miss. And this is where self-compassion comes in, because I think this is the piece most often missing from these conversations. There's this idea that being harsh with yourself is what keeps you accountable, but research consistently shows the opposite.
Being harsh with yourself after a setback makes you more likely to give up. If you miss a few days and then spend a week beating yourself up, the guilt makes it harder to go back. Whereas treating yourself with some kindness, okay, hard week, it happens, tomorrow I start again. That actually builds resilience, the ability to get knocked down and come back. And self-compassion is what builds it, not harshness.
Think about how you'd respond if a close friend told you they'd fallen off track. You wouldn't shout at them. You'd say something kind, like, hey, one bad week doesn't erase everything. Just start again. Do that for yourself, genuinely.
And remember, change is not a straight line. It is messy, it zigzags, it has setbacks and weird detours and weeks that make no sense. But the overall direction, over time, with consistency, is forward. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep coming back. That is the whole skill. Just always coming back.
Okay, I want to end by bringing all of this back to the person listening right now, because everything we've talked about today maps directly onto learning English. Directly.
Right? Every obstacle we discussed, I can see it in language learners. The homeostasis, the brain pulling you back to your native language because it's comfortable and English still requires effort. The motivation trap, waiting until you feel ready to speak, which never fully comes. You're never going to feel completely ready. No one does.
The identity piece. I'm just not a language person. Said like it's carved in stone, when actually it might just mean you haven't found the right approach yet, or you haven't given it enough consistent time. Those are very different things from I fundamentally cannot.
The environment, surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. Podcasts, shows, music, books, anything. Not because every minute has to be a formal lesson, just because the more English is around you, the more natural it becomes, the less effort it takes, the more automatic the understanding gets.
And every single minute you spend listening, like right now, in this moment, is a vote for the person you're becoming. Someone comfortable in English, someone who thinks in English without translating first, someone who connects with people across the world through this language. You are already doing it right now.
And it takes time, of course it does. But the people who get there are not the ones born with some special gift. They're the ones who showed up, over and over again, even when progress was invisible, even when it felt slow, even when they felt stuck.
And if you feel stuck right now, that is okay. That is so normal. Stuck is not stopped. Stuck is just sometimes what progress feels like from the inside, when you're too close to see how far you've actually come.
So keep going. Be patient with yourself. Trust the process even on the days when you can't feel it working. Because on most days you won't feel it working, and it will be working anyway.
Thank you so much for being here. I mean that sincerely. You chose to spend this time in English. You chose to show up for yourself today in a language that isn't your first. And that takes a kind of courage and consistency that deserves way more credit than most people give themselves.
You are already doing the thing that most people say they want to do and never start. You are already being different. So give yourself real, genuine credit for that today.
We'll be back soon. If this one meant something to you, share it with just one person. And if you have topics you'd love us to cover, leave them in the comments. We genuinely love hearing from you.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Wordy Talks. Learn English, change your life.